Boom! When Lin Feng swallowed this drop of Divine Emperor's blood, it felt as if he had swallowed a ball of flames. His entire body began to boil. Waves of terrifying power exploded in Lin Feng's body, instantly filling every cell in his body. A pained expression appeared on Lin Feng's face. He was indeed in great agony. Every cell was being filled. This drop of Divine Emperor's blood was too domineering, unlike those new substances. Originally, the blood of a Divine Emperor did not have the effect of dividing cells. It only contained a large amount of energy, a terrifying energy that could cause even a Grand Emperor to be blasted apart. That and spatial innate ability. That's right, spatial innate ability. Lin Feng could sense many insights regarding space from this drop of Divine Emperor's blood. Although it was very little, it was still very impressive when put together. It was at least comparable to decades of diligent cultivation on Lin Feng's part. Lin Feng had previously projected that it would be impossible for him to comprehend the ultimate planetary law without 100 years. But now, with the blood of a Divine Emperor, it could save him decades of hard cultivation. After Lin Feng absorbed the blood of the Divine Emperor, every cell in his body felt as if it was about to explode. At this moment, Lin Feng could only take the initiative to divide them. Divide! Lin Feng lowered his voice and almost growled. Dividing the cells proactively was extremely painful. Moreover, if there was not enough energy, it would cause irreversible damage. It would even severely injure one's foundation, such that it would be impossible to divide them in the future. Hence, unless they're absolutely confident or unless it's absolutely necessary, no one would cultivate by diving their cells proactively. However, Lin Feng had resolutely decided to divide his cells proactively. He had swallowed the blood of a Divine Emperor. Why would he need to worry about the problem of energy? Rumble. As Lin Feng's cells proactively divided, his combat body was also expanding rapidly. 28 billion kilometers, 30 billion kilometers, 35 billion kilometers, 40 billion kilometers. The energy was simply too abundant. Moreover, after devouring the blood of the Divine Emperor, which contained some spatial comprehension, Lin Feng even felt that every cell of his seemed to contain space and could store infinite energy. Of course, this was only an illusion, but one could clearly sense how astonishing the arcane knowledge of space contained in the blood of a Divine Emperor was. In the blink of an eye, Lin Feng's combat body had already expanded to 56 billion kilometers. This was twice the size of Lin Feng's previous combat body. It was almost doubled, which was equivalent to all the cells in his body dividing once. Moreover, the combat body showed no signs of stopping. It was actually still expanding without any signs of slowing down. Even Lin Feng was shocked by this. Was a drop of Divine Emperor's blood so formidable? Lin Feng had already tried his best to elevate divine kings, divine venerables, and even divine emperors. However, it was only a drop of blood, and could not even be considered essence blood. How could it possess such terrifying energy? Lin Feng naturally did not know. In reality, this drop of Divine Emperor's blood was no longer just the blood of a Divine Emperor. Ever since Divine Emperor Void Sky transformed into the universe, he was actually already a universal life form. Unfortunately, he failed. He did not transform into the universe, but left behind a broken cosmos. The hair, bones, and blood he left behind could all be considered universal life forms. It was just that they had never entered the chaos, and thus did not carry the aura of chaos. Hence, this drop of blood could contain such a terrifying amount of energy. Otherwise, the blood of a Divine Emperor alone would be far from enough to expand Lin Feng's combat body to this extent. 60 billion kilometers, 70 billion kilometers, 80 billion kilometers. Lin Feng's combat body expanded faster and faster. In the end, every time it expanded, it would expand by at least 10 billion kilometers. Lin Feng's combat body was almost at its limit, and there was already a hint of consummation. A consummate combat body. It was the consummate combat body again. This time, Lin Feng was a dignified venerable, an advanced planetary life form. Perhaps someone might have attained a planetary consummate combat body before, but had an advanced planetary consummate combat body ever appeared in the universe? At least Lin Feng had never heard of it. But now, just a drop of Divine Emperor's blood was enough for Lin Feng to sense the aura of consummation. It was as if he could already see the consummate combat body within reach. Finally, Lin Feng's combat body reached 95 billion kilometers. Just a little short. Lin Feng felt a little helpless. There was no more Divine Emperor's blood. He yearned to find more of the Divine Emperor's blood. However, he also knew that after so many years, it was already fortunate that such a drop of blood was left behind. How could he possibly come across more of the Divine Emperor's blood? Still, he had clearly sensed that he had almost attained the consummate combat body. This feeling could not be wrong. Perhaps when his combat body exceeded 100 billion kilometers, it would be the time he attained the consummate combat body. Even though he felt a little regretful that he had not cultivated the consummate combat body, Lin Feng also knew that this might be a threshold. If he could cross it, his path would be open and unimpeded. If he could not cross it, he might not see any improvement for billions of years. However, even without cultivating the consummate combat body, Lin Feng's combat body had already reached 95 billion kilometers. If it was enhanced by 1,000-fold, it would be equivalent to a combat body of 95 trillion kilometers, crossing the threshold of 10 light-years. 10 light-years was practically the threshold of a top-notch Grand Emperor. Only those who had comprehended the ultimate law and had a combat body of 10 light-years could be called a top-notch Grand Emperor. After Lin Feng's current combat body was enhanced, it was also barely comparable to the combat body of a top-notch Grand Emperor, but it was only a top-notch Grand Emperor's combat body. Relying on the 10,000-fold enhancement of the ultimate law, Divine Sovereign Void Sky only had a combat body equivalent to about 10 light-years, and it was only comparable to the combat body of a top-notch Grand Emperor. However, true top-notch Grand Emperors still had the enhancement of ultimate laws. Even the weakest ultimate law could provide enhancement. The lesser ones could provide an enhancement of 1-fold, while the greater ones could even provide enhancements of more than 10-fold. There were also weak and strong ultimate laws. This depended on the level of comprehension of the ultimate law and the compatibility of the combat body. For example, although Grand Emperor Long Yuan was also a top-notch Grand Emperor, the enhancement from his ultimate law was actually only about 1-fold. He could be considered a most ordinary top-notch Grand Emperor. This was because the combat body that Grand Emperor Long Yuan had chosen back then was still a little incompatible with the ultimate law he had comprehended. That was why there was not much enhancement. Those top-notch Grand Emperors who had an ultimate law that was completely compatible could receive an enhancement of 10 times from the law. That would be equivalent to a combat body of hundreds of light-years. How powerful would that be? Lin Feng and Divine Sovereign Void Sky only had the combat power of top-notch Grand Emperors at the basic level now. However, Lin Feng had an advantage over Divine Sovereign Void Sky, because he only had a 1,000-fold enhancement at the moment, and had yet to comprehend the ultimate law. With the sacred stone of anathema, he would be able to comprehend the ultimate law sooner or later. At that time, even if he was only a venerable, he could easily defeat Divine Sovereign Void Sky, and would even be stronger than most top-notch Grand Emperors. The consummate combat body was so powerful that it could bring others to despair. It was indeed worthy of being the hardest cultivation method in the universe. Once one mastered the consummate combat body, their potential would be limitless. Success. In the secret chamber, Divine Sovereign Void Sky looked at the Void Sky Divine Palace in front of him and smiled. Ever since he entered the secret chamber of the Void Sky Divine Palace and discovered many new materials, he had used these materials to begin refining his Void Sky Divine Temple. The Void Sky Divine Temple was an origin weapon he had forged when he was still weak. Although it was also very strong, it had clearly not reached the level of a top-notch Grand Emperor, and was no match for Lin Feng's Starfell Pearl. However, the Void Sky Divine Temple could grow continuously. Now that it had been refined by Divine Sovereign Void Sky again, many precious new materials had been added to it. Even Divine Sovereign Void Sky could not obtain these materials, and they could only be found in the Void Sky Divine Palace. These new materials were all the treasures of Divine Emperor Void Sky and were very precious. Hence, now that the Void Sky Divine Temple had been refined again, its power had increased substantially, and it was already comparable to a top-notch Grand Emperor. Humph, even if I encounter the Starfell Pearl again, I can suppress it. At that time, without the Starfell Pearl, what can Lin Feng do? Divine Sovereign Void Sky was in a very good mood. He had never given up on the Law Stone on Lin Feng. What he wanted the most was the Law Stone. However, Lin Feng had the Starfell Pearl. Even Divine Sovereign Void Sky had no way to deal with it. If he could not deal with the Starfell Pearl, Divine Sovereign Void Sky would not attack Lin Feng. However, now, Divine Sovereign Void Sky had finally increased the power of the Void Sky Divine Temple as he had wished. As an origin weapon specifically used for suppression and confinement, once it reached the level of a top-notch Grand Emperor, it would be very formidable. Divine Sovereign Void Sky took another look at this treasure vault. The few origin weapons had all been cleaned out by Divine Emperor Void Sky. The remaining new materials had also been cleaned out. Everything that could be taken from the entire secret chamber was taken by Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Unfortunately, he did not find any new substance that could divide the combat body cells and strengthen the combat body. However, Divine Sovereign Void Sky believed that the next secret chamber must contain the new substances he needed. Let's go! Divine Sovereign Void Sky put away the Void Sky Divine Temple and stepped out of the secret chamber. Swoosh! Divine Sovereign Void Sky's figure instantly disappeared. It's time to leave. Lin Feng stood in the empty cosmos. His combat body had already increased to 95 billion kilometers. With a 1,000-fold enhancement, it would be comparable to a combat body of 10 light-years. His combat power was already that of a genuine top-notch Grand Emperor. Even the weakest top-notch Grand Emperor was a top-notch Grand Emperor. In the entire cosmos, such strength could allow one to do almost whatever they wanted. Not many things could pose a threat to Lin Feng anymore. This was especially the case when Lin Feng filled the remaining 6 Starfell Pearls to form the space-folding array. How strong would that be? Even Lin Feng himself could not imagine it. Looking at the empty cosmos, Lin Feng wanted to leave, but he realized that he could not leave no matter what, as if this cosmos had no end. There was no way to warp space here. If he just relied on flying, even if it was a broken cosmos, Lin Feng probably would not be able to reach the end even if he flew for billions of years. Void Sky Divine Pearl. Lin Feng asked the Void Sky Divine Pearl to lead the way again, and Lin Feng followed behind it. Soon, Lin Feng realized that a cosmic storm was actually sweeping over in front of him. Lin Feng could not dodge it even if he wanted to. However, Lin Feng was not very worried. It was just a cosmic storm. If he could not avoid it, he would just resist it. Hence, Lin Feng used his 95 billion kilometer combat body, intending to resist it head-on. Humph! The cosmic storm swept over. Lin Feng's combat body had indeed withstood the severe test. The power of this cosmic storm was not too strong, but as soon as he came into contact with it, his expression changed drastically. This isn't a cosmic storm. Lin Feng's expression changed drastically. This was not a cosmic storm. Or rather, this was not just a cosmic storm. As the cosmic storm drowned Lin Feng's entire body, Lin Feng felt a huge force sweep him into a spatial passage. He disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the empty cosmos of the silent galaxy, there was not even a single silent beast. In this cosmos, space was shattered. It was deathly silent and oppressive, as if life would never appear. But suddenly, traces of violent spatial ripples appeared in the cosmos, accompanied by a storm. Swoosh! A staggering figure was flung out of the space by the storm, landing in this cosmos. Then, the power of the storm seemed to have dissipated, and it quickly disappeared. Lin Feng, who was flung out of the spatial passage, slowly came back to his senses. His combat body was not damaged at all. However, when he saw the surrounding cosmos, his expression changed abruptly. The silent galaxy? I was thrown out of the silent galaxy. Lin Feng's expression was very dark. He had not even seen the treasure vault of the Void Sky Divine Palace. He wanted more new materials and more new substances. In particular, he still needed Divine Sovereign Void Sky's spatial divine runes. Looking at the spatial divine runes on the Void Sky Divine Palace, Lin Feng knew that Divine Emperor Void Sky must have very high attainments in spatial divine runes. If he could obtain more spatial divine runes, wouldn't his Starfell pearls become even more powerful? But now, he had actually been thrown out of the Void Sky Divine Palace by the cosmic storm. He had not comprehended the ultimate law of space, and without cooperation with Divine Sovereign Void Sky, how could he find the Void Sky Divine Palace again? Lin Feng's expression was very gloomy. Just as he was still thinking of a solution, traces of ripples suddenly appeared in the space again. Immediately after, a familiar figure appeared in the cosmos. Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Lin Feng. Their eyes met, and the atmosphere became a little strange. The figure that had just appeared was Divine Sovereign Void Sky. At this moment, Divine Sovereign Void Sky also had a confused expression. However, when he saw Lin Feng and his surroundings, his heart sank even further. He had been teleported out of the Void Sky Divine Palace. Without the spatial divine runes, it would probably be difficult for Divine Sovereign Void Sky to enter the Void Sky Divine Palace again. However, when both parties entered the Void Sky Divine Palace previously, they had schemed against each other and fought. They were both filled with pent-up anger. All it needs is the spatial divine runes. I'll capture Lin Feng and force him to hand over the spatial divine runes and the Law Stone. Divine Sovereign Void Sky quickly made his decision. Boom! Almost at the same time, Lin Feng and Divine Sovereign Void Sky both used their combat bodies. Divine Sovereign Void Sky wanted to capture Lin Feng and forced Lin Feng to hand over the Law Stone and the spatial divine runes. It was the same for Lin Feng. He also wanted the sacred stone of anathema that Divine Sovereign Void Sky had obtained. He could even enter the Void Sky Divine Palace at will after controlling Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Moreover, both of their strengths had increased substantially. Neither of them was afraid of the other. Hence, the two of them attacked. Under the 10,000-fold enhancement, Divine Sovereign Void Sky's combat body was comparable to a top-notch Grand Emperor's combat body of 10 light-years. Lin Feng was also very decisive. The 3 Starfell pearls quickly transformed into 3 streams of light that smashed towards Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Divine Sovereign Void Sky sneered and pointed. Void Sky Divine Temple. Suppress. Boom. The enormous Void Sky Divine Temple descended from the sky and enveloped the 3 Starfell pearls. Void Sky Divine Temple? Lin Feng saw the Void Sky Divine Temple at a glance. Back then, 1 Starfell pearl had already caused cracks to appear in the Void Sky Divine Temple. Now that the 3 Starfell pearls formed the space-folding array, how could the Void Sky Divine Temple suppress them? However, as the Void Sky Divine Temple landed hard, the 3 Starfell pearls were suppressed at once. Even though Lin Feng could still sense that the 3 Starfell pearls seemed to be struggling violently in the Void Sky Divine Temple, they could not break free from the restraints of the Void Sky Divine Temple in a short period of time. The Void Sky Divine Temple had become stronger. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. It was obvious that the power of the Void Sky Divine Temple had increased, and it seemed to have increased greatly. It had already increased to the level of a top-notch Grand Emperor, and could even temporarily trap the 3 Starfell pearls. Although it could not trap them for too long, and the 3 Starfell pearls were quite extraordinary, it only needed to trap them for a short while. The outcome of a battle between top-notch Grand Emperors could be determined in an instant. This little amount of time was enough. Lin Feng, your origin weapon has already been suppressed by me. What else can you do? Divine Sovereign Void Sky stood in the void with his hands folded behind his back. He had already used his combat body. Coupled with the 10,000-fold enhancement of the ultimate law, he was comparable to a top-notch Grand Emperor. In this situation, Divine Sovereign Void Sky seemed to have returned to his invincible days. With the enhanced version of the Void Sky Divine Temple, he had nothing to fear, even if he faced the 3 ancestors again. In fact, the 3 ancestors no longer had any advantages. The reason was very simple. His Void Sky Divine Temple could suppress all things. Although the anti-law Divine Pearl was strong, it could only imprison laws. The Void Sky Divine Temple did not have laws, and could directly suppress the anti-law Divine Pearl. The three ancestors were only comparable to ordinary Grand Emperors, and were perhaps even weaker than ordinary Grand Emperors. Lin Feng was the only obstacle to Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Do you think your victory is guaranteed? Lin Feng's expression was very calm. At this moment, he did not hold back anymore. He suddenly used his combat body and switched to the greater annihilative combat body. Rumble. Once Lin Feng used the greater annihilative combat body, the cosmos seemed to be collapsing. A 95 billion kilometer combat body with a 1,000-fold enhancement was equivalent to a top-notch Grand Emperor's combat body of 10 light-years. In terms of the combat body now, Lin Feng was not inferior to Divine Sovereign Void Sky. What? Divine Sovereign Void Sky was shocked again. He had had fortuitous encounters since he was young, and later obtained the Law Stone. He felt that his luck was already unparalleled in the universe. However, ever since he met Lin Feng, Divine Sovereign Void Sky had been impeded at every turn. Now, after only a few years, everyone had entered the Void Sky Divine Temple. Divine Sovereign Void Sky had only increased the power of the Void Sky Divine Temple somewhat. However, Lin Feng had actually increased his combat body by several times. The terrifying annihilative power blasted towards Divine Sovereign Void Sky without restraint. However, Divine Sovereign Void Sky was indeed worthy of someone who had comprehended ultimate laws. The various ultimate laws he had comprehended were all infinitely miraculous. Perhaps they were useless against those true top-notch Grand Emperors. After all, those top-notch Grand Emperors had all comprehended ultimate laws. However, against cultivators who had not comprehended the ultimate law, they would still be advantageous at every turn. Boom! Lin Feng's palm struck Divine Sovereign Void Sky hard. Divine Sovereign Void Sky's entire body shook. Lin Feng indeed had the strength of a top-notch Grand Emperor. In fact, in terms of strength alone, Lin Feng was slightly stronger, enough to suppress Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Spatial Sunder. Divine Sovereign Void Sky waved his hand, and a terrifying spatial power acted on Lin Feng. There was a ripping sound. The ultimate law of space was indeed extraordinary. The spatial power sliced through Lin Feng's body, and even suppressed Lin Feng's advanced law of space, rendering it useless. However, Lin Feng's current combat body was comparable to a top-notch Grand Emperor's. So what if it was cut? Tidal Combat Body. Lin Feng switched to the Tidal Combat Body. With the powerful restorative ability of the Tidal Combat Body, this minor injury recovered in the blink of an eye. Useless. It's useless. Lin Feng's glare became more and more intense, and his attacks became more and more ferocious. He slammed down again and again, not giving Divine Sovereign Void Sky any chance to catch his breath. However, Divine Sovereign Void Sky could use the ultimate law of space to warp space at any time. Even if he was not a match for the moment, he could retreat calmly. Seeing that Lin Feng's attacks were getting more and more aggressive, Divine Sovereign Void Sky's heart sank slightly. They were evenly matched. This was a true even match with no shortcomings. In fact, Lin Feng was even stronger. He could rely on the ultimate law to contend with Lin Feng, but he could not severely injure Lin Feng. Even though he was disappointed, Divine Sovereign Void Sky had cultivated for billions of years and knew what to do. At this moment, he should leave. Swoosh! Without any hesitation, Divine Sovereign Void Sky warped space and left. Trying to run? Lin Feng immediately activated the Starfell Pearl. It was impossible for the other party to take his Starfell Pearls too. Boom! The Starfell Pearl suddenly broke free from the restraints of the Void Sky Divine Temple and returned to Lin Feng's hand. Moreover, Lin Feng had deliberately left his imprint on the Void Sky Divine Temple. As long as he was not in the spatial turbulence, Lin Feng could sense the location of Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Huh? He warped for hundreds of light years. Lin Feng also took a step forward, switched his combat body to the Void Traversal Combat Body, and warped space to catch up. Swoosh! As soon as he exited the spatial passage, Lin Feng struck down with a palm. Lin Feng! Divine Sovereign Void Sky roared. He could only fight back and resist. Lin Feng took a step out of the spatial passage and realized that the cosmos here was filled with planets. With a thought, he immediately took out 4 starfell pearls. The 4th one did not have any planets yet. Load! Lin Feng's huge combat body filled the cosmos. With a wave of his hand, all the planets within a radius of 100 billion kilometers were captured by Lin Feng into the 4th starfell pearl. What? Divine Sovereign Void Sky's heart skipped a beat. What did he see? There was actually a 4th starfell pearl. Lin Feng still had a 4th starfell pearl. When the forces of the 4 starfell pearls were combined, even his Void Sky Divine Temple would probably not be able to suppress them. Run! Run as fast as possible! Divine Sovereign Void Sky had never been so aggrieved and forced into such dire straits before. Even though he was repelled by the combined forces of the 3 ancestors and Lin Feng last time, it was impossible for the 3 ancestors to keep pursuing Divine Sovereign Void Sky. He could use the ultimate law of space to retreat at any time. But as for Lin Feng, he had been pursuing Divine Sovereign Void Sky the whole time. For the first time, Divine Sovereign Void Sky felt very suffocated and helpless. He escaped again? Lin Feng frowned. If Divine Sovereign Void Sky wanted to escape, there was nothing he could do. His current strength was not enough to crush Divine Sovereign Void Sky. But seeing so many planets, Lin Feng naturally would not pass up on them. However, Lin Feng would not allow Divine Sovereign Void Sky to escape. After capturing a large number of planets, he began to hunt down Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Almost the entire silent galaxy was filled with their figures. Moreover, as time passed, Divine Sovereign Void Sky felt more and more strained, because the power of Lin Feng's 4th starfell pearl was also increasing, becoming stronger and stronger. Divine Sovereign Void Sky did not know how much longer he could hold out for. No, this can't continue. I have to think of a way. Divine Sovereign Void Sky maintained the calm in his heart. Now that he was being hunted down by Lin Feng, he really felt like he had nowhere to go. Suddenly, a thought seemed to flash through Divine Sovereign Void Sky's mind. Lin Feng had the combat body of a top-notch Grand Emperor, so Divine Sovereign Void Sky could not do anything to Lin Feng. But what if Lin Feng's combat body did not work? At that moment, Divine Sovereign Void Sky immediately made up his mind and warped space again. However, this time he had a target, and that was the 3 ancestors. Or rather, the anti-law Divine Pearl in the possession of the 3 ancestors. There are so many planets. Lin Feng exited the space again, but there was no sign of Divine Sovereign Void Sky here. This Divine Sovereign Void Sky had also become smarter. Every time he warped, he would warp continuously. If Lin Feng did not keep chasing, he would not be able to catch up to Divine Sovereign Void Sky at all. After all, Divine Sovereign Void Sky had comprehended the ultimate law of space. In terms of warping space, Lin Feng was inferior to Divine Sovereign Void Sky. However, Lin Feng was not worried. Divine Sovereign Void Sky could not escape. His mark was very secretive. It would be very difficult for even Divine Sovereign Void Sky to discover it. He would only treat it as some kind of arcane technique. Although Divine Sovereign Void Sky was busy running and in a very sorry state, Lin Feng had not severely injured him either. It was not that Lin Feng did not want to, but that he could not. His strength was greater than Divine Sovereign Void Sky's, but not crushingly so. My strength is still insufficient. There are so many planets here. I might as well fill the starfell pearls. When the time comes, with 9 starfell pearls, I'll see what other methods Divine Sovereign Void Sky has to escape. Lin Feng decided not to chase after him. In any case, Divine Sovereign Void Sky could not escape. If he kept pursuing, he would not be able to injure Divine Sovereign Void Sky either. He might as well fill the starfell pearls first. At that time, he would kill Divine Sovereign Void Sky for certain. The surrounding cosmos was dark and quiet. Lin Feng manifested a massive combat body that stretched across the cosmos. Retrieve! Lin Feng's combat body was like a black hole, capturing a large number of planets in a frenzy. Wherever Lin Feng passed, the cosmos would become empty, and all the planets would disappear. 1,000,000, 10,000,000, 100,000,000. In the blink of an eye, Lin Feng's fourth starfell pearl had already been filled with 200 million planets. Its power was comparable to the other 3 planets. The 4 starfell pearls floated in the cosmos, emitting a suffocating aura. However, this was not the end. Lin Feng continued to take out the 5th and 6th starfell pearls. He wanted to fill up all the remaining starfell pearls. When the 9 starfell pearls formed the space-folding array, even Lin Feng did not dare to imagine how powerful they would be. Divine Sovereign Void Sky kept warping. With every warp, he would stop slightly, but he found that Lin Feng had not continued to pursue him. If Lin Feng could leave a tracking imprint on Divine Sovereign Void Sky, Divine Sovereign Void Sky could do the same on him. He's not moving? Divine Sovereign Void Sky did not dare to look for the 3 ancestors directly right now. If Lin Feng learned of his intentions and killed the 3 ancestors in advance to seize the anti-law Divine Pearl, he would never get another chance. Divine Sovereign Void Sky warped space a few more times in succession. Only when he realized that Lin Feng's location still had not moved did he relax. According to his speculation, even if Lin Feng wanted to warp space, there would be a period of time between. Then, this period of time would be Divine Sovereign Void Sky's opportunity. Killing the 3 ancestors would not take long. Let's go! Divine Sovereign Void Sky warped space again. This time, he arrived directly outside the 81 planets. Boom! Divine Sovereign Void Sky manifested his combat body and struck towards the cosmic array enveloping the 81 planets. Immediately, it was as if the entire cosmos was shaking violently. This was while those planets were under the protection of the cosmic array. Otherwise, Divine Sovereign Void Sky could crush all the planets with a single palm strike. What? Divine Sovereign Void Sky! The 3 ancestors were immediately alarmed. They were also cultivating in seclusion, but they did not expect Divine Sovereign Void Sky to appear again. Quick! Quick! Activate the cosmic array. We only have control over 3/4 of the cosmic array. Venerable Lin Feng has control over the remaining quarter. Hurry up and inform Venerable Lin Feng. The 3 ancestors were extremely shocked. Although they had dealt with Divine Sovereign Void Sky previously, they were still a little panicked now that Divine Sovereign Void Sky had suddenly appeared. As they activated the cosmic array, Lin Feng never responded. Not good. Venerable Lin Feng isn't on the planet. Divine Sovereign Void Sky must have learned of this news and specially chose the time when Venerable Lin Feng was not around. This is bad. Humph! If the 3 of us had controlled the entire cosmic array back then, even Divine Sovereign Void Sky would need some time to break in, right? Divine Sovereign Void Sky will be able to break the array soon. We have the anti-law Divine Pearl, so we have nothing to fear from Divine Sovereign Void Sky. The 3 ancestors calmed their minds and immediately manipulated the cosmic array for defense. In the cosmos, Divine Sovereign Void Sky looked at the familiar cosmic array, and a cold smile appeared on his lips. I was the one who set up this cosmic array. If it were a complete cosmic array, perhaps I would need to put in some effort, but as for an incomplete cosmic array. Divine Sovereign Void Sky extended a huge hand and slammed down violently. Boom! This time, the cosmic array shook violently again. However, as Divine Sovereign Void Sky suddenly struck it 3 times, the cosmic array finally failed to hold out. Crunch! The shattering of the cosmic array was an incomplete cosmic array to begin with. The 3 ancestors only controlled 3/4 of the cosmic array. How could it resist the attack of Divine Sovereign Void Sky? Swoosh! 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 The 3 ancestors made a prompt decision and flew out of the planet. They manifested their combat bodies and confronted Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Divine Sovereign Void Sky, you still dare to show yourself? You escaped last time. You should have stayed hidden. How dare you show yourself again? It won't be so easy for you to escape this time. The 3 ancestors rebuked him sternly. Fool! Divine Sovereign Void Sky had never paid any heed to the 3 ancestors. The disdain on his face infuriated the 3 ancestors even more. Anti-law Divine Pearl. The 3 ancestors took out the anti-law Divine Pearl directly. It quickly transformed into a stream of light that enveloped Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Immediately, the power of Divine Sovereign Void Sky's combat body decreased drastically, and he was now only equivalent to a quasi-emperor. With such a combat body, it was naturally impossible for him to contend with the three ancestors. However, Divine Sovereign Void Sky was not afraid or worried at all. When he saw the three ancestors use the anti-law Divine Pearl, a mocking smile appeared on his face instead. Void Sky Divine Temple. Suppress. Rumble. The Void Sky Divine Temple descended from the sky and appeared out of thin air. The three ancestors paid no heed to it. In their opinion, the Void Sky Divine Temple could not suppress the Divine Pearl of Forbidden Laws at all. However, they were destined to be greatly disappointed this time. The Void Sky Divine Temple blotted out the sky and directly suppressed the cosmos in all directions. Even space was confined, and the anti-law Divine Pearl was instantly suppressed by it. Without the confinement of the anti-law Divine Pearl, Divine Sovereign Void Sky's laws recovered again. The aura of his combat body also rose steadily, reaching the level of a top-notch Grand Emperor. Impossible. How can this be? Anti-law Divine Pearl, our anti-law Divine Pearl. Divine Sovereign, please spare our lives. The three ancestors panicked. Without the anti-law Divine Pearl, they were only comparable to ordinary Grand Emperors. How could they resist Divine Sovereign Void Sky? Looking at the pale faces of the three ancestors, Divine Sovereign Void Sky's gaze was cold and unmoved. He gently flipped his hand and casually slammed it down. Boom! The combat bodies of the three ancestors instantly collapsed, turning into cosmic dust. The cosmos returned to calm. Divine Sovereign Void Sky glanced coldly at the bloody mist that the three ancestors had been reduced to. He was disdainful of these three ancestors, from the bottom of his heart. Relying on a mere anti-law Divine Pearl, they had been presumptuous enough to think they could resist him. If not for Lin Feng, he would have dealt with the three ancestors long ago. Lin Feng was his true archenemy. Although Lin Feng also relied on the Starfell Pearl, apart from the Starfell Pearl, Lin Feng himself was stronger than ordinary Grand Emperors by relying on the enhancement of laws. Now that he had reached the level of a top-notch Grand Emperor, his strength was improving at every moment. As for the three ancestors, they were nothing. They were just lucky enough to obtain the anti-law Divine Pearl. Did they think that the anti-law Divine Pearl could protect them forever? Little did they know that both Divine Sovereign Void Sky and Lin Feng could easily defeat the three ancestors and seize the anti-law Divine Pearl. Divine Sovereign Void Sky was also a little thankful. No matter why Lin Feng had not attacked him back then, now that the anti-law Divine Pearl was in his possession, he could be considered to have gained a huge advantage. Divine Sovereign Void Sky made a light grab, and the Void Sky Divine Temple brought the suppressed anti-law Divine Pearl into his hand. Holding the anti-law Divine Pearl, a smile finally appeared on Divine Sovereign Void Sky's face. For so many days, he had been in such a sorry state. There was nothing he could do and nowhere he could run to. But now his luck had finally turned. He had a treasure that could reverse the situation. With this anti-law Divine Pearl, he would suppress Lin Feng's 3 or 4 Starfell Pearls, even at the risk of damaging the Void Sky Divine Temple. Then, Divine Sovereign Void Sky would use the anti-law Divine Pearl to confine the enhancement of Lin Feng's laws. At that time, Lin Feng would only have a combat body of 95 billion kilometers. How could he contend with Divine Sovereign Void Sky then? Divine Sovereign Void Sky only wished he could warp space and confront Lin Feng right now. He knew that the longer the delay, the more likely troubles would arise, so he had to hurry. There's still a little bit of time left. I have to refine the anti-law Divine Pearl. Divine Sovereign Void Sky immediately began to refine the anti-law Divine Pearl. The moment the anti-law Divine Pearl was completely refined would be the moment Lin Feng was a dead man. In the cold and dark cosmos, Lin Feng kept capturing planets. 10 light-years, 100 light-years, 1,000 light-years, 10,000 light-years. In a short period of time, Lin Feng had already captured countless planets. He had even stopped calculating. He just kept capturing and moving until the Starfell Pearl could no longer accommodate more planets. Wherever Lin Feng passed, it was as if a swarm of locusts had passed. All the planets were transferred into the Starfell Pearls. There were almost no more planets within thousands or even tens of thousands of light years. In their place were the 9 Starfell Pearls floating in front of Lin Feng. The 9 Starfell Pearls were also the limit of the space folding array. The space folding array could only connect 9 planets at most. The 9 Starfell Pearls floated in front of Lin Feng. He did not know how powerful they would be either. He only knew that every Starfell Pearl was comparable to a Grand Emperor combat body of more than 2 light-years. If they were superimposed one by one, they would have the power of a combat body of at least 20 light-years. How strong would a combat body of 20 light-years be when it erupts at full force? Ordinary top-notch Grand Emperors would have a combat body of about 20 light-years, with a one-fold enhancement by law. However, this was not as simple as a top-notch Grand Emperor unleashing his full strength. It was a fighting style equivalent to a top-notch Grand Emperor with a 20 light-year combat body, willing to go down with the enemy every time. Who could resist it? Huh? Divine Sovereign Void Sky disappeared again. Lin Feng finally filled the 9 Starfell Pearls. He carefully detected Divine Sovereign Void Sky's presence again, and realized that Divine Sovereign Void Sky seemed to have disappeared again, and was rapidly approaching him. He must be warping space. What's going on? Lin Feng sensed that every time Divine Sovereign Void Sky warped, he was actually approaching him rapidly. This was too strange. Before, wasn't Divine Sovereign Void Sky chased by him until he had nowhere to go? Why was Divine Sovereign Void Sky approaching him now? Lin Feng did not think for long, because traces of spatial ripples had already appeared in the cosmos. Waves of spatial ripples surged through the cosmos. Then, a familiar figure walked out of the space. Divine Sovereign Void Sky? Why? Are you very surprised? Divine Sovereign Void Sky seemed very calm, and a smile appeared on his face. I'm indeed very surprised. How dare Divine Sovereign Void Sky, who was fleeing from me with his tail between his legs, appear in front of me again? Lin Feng sized Divine Sovereign Void Sky up carefully. His aura did not change at all, but his expression had become calm and collected. It seemed like he had something to rely on. However, what else could Divine Sovereign Void Sky rely on now? Divine Sovereign Void Sky stood in the cosmos, as if he wanted to see through Lin Feng. After a long while, he heaved a long sigh and said faintly, "Venerable Lin Feng, both of us have law stones, but ever since I met you, everything has been going wrong for me. I know that you are my archenemy. Only by killing you and obtaining the law stone can I break this destiny." Archenemy? Lin Feng sneered. If this can be considered an archenemy, I don't know how many archenemies I've encountered. No matter what you're relying on, it's good that you're here now. You've saved me the trouble of hunting you down everywhere. Lin Feng's combat body appeared. His 95 billion kilometer combat body, enhanced by 1,000-fold with law, exuded the pressure of a top-notch Grand Emperor. Divine Sovereign Void Sky's gaze narrowed. He was at a disadvantage because he had not cultivated the planetary consummate combat body. With his experience, how could he not know that Lin Feng had cultivated the planetary consummate combat body? Unfortunately, such a genius was destined to fall. A planetary consummate combat body and the Law Stone. If we haven't encountered each other, your potential is unimaginable, even stronger than mine. But now, all that you are is about to be reduced to cosmic dust. Divine Sovereign Void Sky waved his hand gently. The Void Sky Divine Temple suddenly flew out towards Lin Feng, intending to suppress him. At the same time, the Anti-Law Divine Pearl also flew out. A glowing white light instantly enveloped Lin Feng's body, confining the laws on him. The Anti-Law Divine Pearl? Looks like you've already killed the 3 ancestors. Lin Feng was a little surprised. No wonder Divine Sovereign Void Sky dared to return again. It turned out that he did have something to rely on, and it was the Anti-Law Divine Pearl. Divine Starfell Pearl Void Sky first used the Anti-Law Divine Pearl to confine Lin Feng's laws. before using the Void Sky Divine Temple to suppress the Starfell Pearls. Then, Divine Sovereign Void Sky would personally attack and killed Lin Feng completely. Even Lin Feng could not help but admire it. This was indeed a seamless plan. It was as if every segment had been designed, and every detail had been thought of. Practically every step countered him. Originally, Lin Feng had also wanted to deal with the three ancestors and seize the Anti-Law Divine Pearl after dealing with Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Unexpectedly, Divine Sovereign Void Sky was one step ahead. This was indeed the only chance for Divine Sovereign Void Sky to turn the tables. What a pity! You're still a step too late. Lin Feng shook his head, and a smile appeared on his lips. Buzz. Lin Feng waved his hand, and 9 Starfell Pearls floated quietly in front of him. 9. Divine Sovereign Void Sky's expression changed. He had miscalculated again. It turned out that Lin Feng did not have 4 Starfell Pearls, but 9. If there were only 4, his Void Sky Divine Temple could still suppress them by force. Even if it could not suppress them, it could at least stall him and buy Divine Sovereign Void Sky enough time. That period of time was already enough for Divine Sovereign Void Sky to kill Lin Feng, who would be without the enhancement of laws. But now, everything had deviated from Divine Sovereign Void Sky's plan. Everything seemed to have gone out of his control. Bang! The Void Sky Divine Temple suppressed them fiercely, but with a light collision from the 9 Starfell Pearls, the Void Sky Divine Temple seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. Its light immediately dimmed, and it was sent flying. At the same time, Divine Sovereign Void Sky thought of escaping immediately. The Void Sky Divine Temple could not suppress Lin Feng's Starfell Pearls, so his entire plan had fallen through. He could only escape. However, Lin Feng had hunted down Divine Sovereign Void Sky for so long, allowing Divine Sovereign Void Sky to escape time and time again. How could he not be prepared at this moment? Starfell Pearls, go! The Starfell Pearls shook slightly, and the surrounding space was pulverized. Not only was it shattered, it was pulverized. Divine Sovereign Void Sky had comprehended the ultimate law of space, and could still escape from space that was shattered. However, if space was pulverized, and did not even exist anymore, how could Divine Emperor Void Sky escape? The 9 Starfell Pearls whistled as they smashed into Divine Sovereign Void Sky's combat body. The dignified Divine Sovereign with a combat body comparable to a top-notch Grand Emperor was struck by the 9 Starfell Pearls. His entire body shook violently, and then his combat body crumbled. Cells were annihilated in a frenzy. In one head-on clash, Divine Sovereign Void Sky had lost more than 80% of his combat body, and was already severely injured. Divine Sovereign Void Sky also began to panic. In another moment, his combat body would collapse. In other words, in another moment, he would really die. The threat of death was right before his eyes. He would lose everything with a single mistake. He could never have imagined how Lin Feng could forge the 9 Starfell Pearls. I've lost. Divine Sovereign Void Sky's expression was very dark. He was surrounded by Lin Feng's 9 Starfell Pearls, and it was impossible for him to even escape. Lin Feng, you really are my archenemy. You've won. I'll give you the Law Stone, but on one condition. Let me go. Without the Law Stone, I'll no longer be a threat to you. Divine Sovereign Void Sky's face was pale. At this point, one had no choice but to bow down to others. Divine Sovereign Void Sky could recognize the reality of his situation very well. Give it to me. Promise me. You have no room for negotiation. Lin Feng reached out and grabbed the Anti-Law Divine Pearl. Even though the Anti-Law Divine Pearl kept struggling, it could not break free from Lin Feng's restraint. Seeing Lin Feng grab the Anti-Law Divine Pearl, Divine Sovereign Void Sky could do nothing. He did not even activate the Anti-Law Divine Pearl. He knew that it was useless. The Anti-Law Divine Pearl could only confine laws, and did not have any offensive or defensive abilities. Divine Sovereign Void Sky's expression was dim. He knew that it was impossible for Lin Feng to take the initiative to give in. He had already lost completely. However, he wanted to stay alive. Even if he lost everything, as long as he could stay alive, there was still hope. A strange stone appeared in his hand. This was the Law Stone that had accompanied him for billions of years. Without this Law Stone, he would not have been able to grow to his current state. But now he had to give up on this Law Stone. Here, Divine Sovereign Void Sky resolutely tossed the Law Stone to Lin Feng. After all, he knew that Lin Feng was determined to obtain the Law Stone. No matter what, he could no longer keep the Law Stone. Lin Feng reached out and grabbed the Law Stone. This Law Stone looked a little larger than Lin Feng's Sacred Stone of Anathema, emitting a special fluctuation. The Sacred Stone of Anathema in Lin Feng's body shook violently, but Lin Feng suppressed it. It's indeed the Sacred Stone of Anathema. Lin Feng had already confirmed that this Law Stone was actually the Sacred Stone of Anathema. It just had a different name. Lin Feng, I'm no longer a threat. Fulfill your promise. Divine Sovereign Void Sky seemed to be a little anxious. He really did not feel safe in front of Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked up at Divine Sovereign Void Sky. He shook his head and said, "When did I make a promise to you?" Divine Sovereign Void Sky's expression changed drastically. His combat body struggled wildly, trying to charge out. However, as soon as Lin Feng finished speaking, the 9 starfell pearls flew towards Divine Sovereign Void Sky from all directions. Boom! Divine Sovereign Void Sky's combat body collapsed. His expression was filled with indignation. He really could not accept it. His cultivation had always been smooth sailing. Even if he encountered some difficulties in the past, he could turn misfortunes into blessings. However, ever since he met Lin Feng, he had encountered obstacles everywhere, as if he had always been inferior. And now it was all over. The 9 starfell pearls smashed down in a frenzy. Every inch of Divine Sovereign Void Sky's combat body was reduced to cosmic dust. Lin Feng was very certain that Divine Sovereign Void Sky was already dead. He had not missed a single trace of his combat body. With Divine Sovereign Void Sky's ability, perhaps a little flesh and blood was all it took for his combat body to be restored. Lin Feng had no choice but to be cautious. Unlike what Divine Sovereign Void Sky had claimed, losing the Law Stone did not mean he no longer posed any threat to Lin Feng at all. On the contrary, to Lin Feng, Divine Sovereign Void Sky, who knew about the Sacred Stone of Anathema and had even used it, was a huge threat as long as he was alive. If he were not careful, or if Divine Sovereign Void Sky harbored resentment and deliberately revealed the news of the Sacred Stone of Anathema, even some divine kings and divine venerables would probably be tempted. Although Lin Feng was very strong now, if he encountered a divine king or a divine venerable, there was nothing he could do at all. The two were not on the same level and could not be compared. Hence, Lin Feng decisively dealt with Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Moreover, he had indeed not promised Divine Sovereign Void Sky anything. What a pity! Without Divine Sovereign Void Sky's ultimate law of space, I probably won't be able to find the Void Sky Divine Palace for a long time. Lin Feng shook his head. Although he might not be able to find the Void Sky Divine Palace in a short period of time, Lin Feng did not regret killing Divine Sovereign Void Sky. He had the Void Sky Divine Pearl. No matter how the Void Sky Divine Palace moved, he would know the approximate location of the Void Sky Divine Palace. With the Sacred Stone of Anathema, Lin Feng would be able to comprehend the ultimate law of space sooner or later. It would not be a problem for him to open the Void Sky Divine Palace in the future. The only difference was that it might take a little longer, but Lin Feng was not in a hurry. Up until now, he had not even cultivated for more than 1,000 years. Why should he care about time? Before leaving, Lin Feng was still worried. He patrolled the surroundings carefully again. After confirming that there was no longer the aura of Divine Sovereign Void Sky, he stepped into space and warped towards the 81 planets. The shattered space in the huge cosmos was also gradually recovering, as if nothing had happened. It returned to its former peace. In a flash, 10 years had passed. To cultivators, 10 years was just a blink of an eye. Lin Feng guarded the planets. Now, these 81 planets were completely under Lin Feng's control. Lin Feng had also done a thorough study of the cosmic array, so he could naturally control it now. Even without the cosmic array, Lin Feng could easily control 81 planets. The reason was very simple. These 81 planets did not even have a single combatant at the level of a Grand Emperor. The three ancestors were all dead. Who else could still contend with Lin Feng? Under Lin Feng's rule, it was neither like the authoritarian atmosphere under divine sovereign void sky, nor was it like the anxious and incompetent attitude of the three ancestors. The occasional attack from the silent beasts were all easily resolved by Lin Feng. He did not even manifest his combat body. Once a few starfell pearls whistled over, even Grand Emperor-level silent beasts could not withstand a single strike. Hence, in the past 10 years, Lin Feng had basically won the hearts of the cultivators on the 81 planets. Lin Feng did not really care about the loyalty of the cultivators on the planets. After returning to the planet, apart from refining the anti-law divine pearl, Lin Feng began to check the miraculous aspects of the two sacred stones of anathema. Strangely enough, when he took out both sacred stones of anathema, the two sacred stones of anathema actually slowly fused, forming a larger sacred stone of anathema. This new sacred stone of anathema improved Lin Feng's comprehension of laws by another level, and his comprehension speed increased by several times. Hence, over the short period of 10 years, Lin Feng comprehended the law of space with his full attention. Buzz. Suddenly, Lin Feng opened his eyes. His eyes were like the vast cosmos, with spatial cracks appearing in them. "I see," Lin Feng muttered softly. A terrifying fluctuation appeared in the cosmos. Lin Feng's figure flashed, and he disappeared. Swoosh! Lin Feng's figure appeared in the vast cosmos. This place was empty. Lin Feng pointed gently. Boom! The law of space surged, and traces of cracks appeared in space. Void Traversal Combat Body. Lin Feng used the Void Traversal Combat Body. The 95 billion kilometer Void Traversal Combat Body looked very powerful. In particular, with the enhancement of a 1,000-fold law, it was already comparable to a top-notch Grand Emperor's combat body of 10 light-years. But now, the aura on Lin Feng's body increased again, in a frenzy. A terrifying law of space acted on the Void Traversal Combat Body. Immediately, the aura of the Void Traversal Combat Body erupted with a bang, almost sweeping through the entire cosmos. 10,000 times. An enhancement of 10,000 times. The ultimate law of space. Lin Feng clenched his hands. It was just too powerful. He had the feeling that he could easily tear apart the entire cosmos. He could even kill Grand Emperors with just a spatial sunder, no matter how many of them there were. The Void Traversal Combat Body enhanced by the ultimate law of space would be equivalent to a combat body of 100 light-years. How terrifying was this? Lin Feng was only a venerable and an advanced planetary life form at the moment. He was actually a top-notch Grand Emperor with a combat body of hundreds of light-years. Even divine kings and divine venerables would probably be shocked. It was not that there were no individuals with combat bodies of hundreds of light-years among top-notch Grand Emperors. In fact, with the enhancement of the ultimate law, some top-notch Grand Emperors could even have combat bodies equivalent to hundreds of light-years. That would be even more terrifying. After all, back then, Lin Feng and Divine Sovereign Void Sky could only be considered novice-level top-notch Grand Emperors. The difference between a Grand Emperor and a Divine King was just too great. Even the weakest Divine King had a combat body of tens of thousands of light-years. For example, Divine King Bamond was far from the best among Divine Kings, but he still had a terrifying combat body of more than 100,000 light-years. However, now that Lin Feng was a venerable, his combat body was already comparable to a Grand Emperor's combat body of hundreds of light-years. It was simply incredible. The ultimate law of space is really miraculous. Lin Feng sensed the powerful strength in his body. Moreover, the ultimate law of space made him feel like a sprite of space, with unparalleled compatibility with space. He could even sense anything unusual in the space immediately. At this moment, even the anti-law Divine Pearl could not completely confine Lin Feng's ultimate law of space. He could leave whenever he wanted, and the anti-law Divine Pearl could not stop him. This was the ultimate law. However, currently, Lin Feng had only comprehended the ultimate law of space. All these years, he had focused all his energy on the law of space. Hence, his law of tides and law of annihilation did not improve much. This was also because Lin Feng needed the ultimate law of space very much now. Once he comprehended the ultimate law of space, Lin Feng would be able to sense the Void Sky Divine Palace. Then, he would be able to find the Void Sky Divine Palace and enter it. As for the law of tides and the law of annihilation with the sacred stone of anathema, it was only a matter of time before Lin Feng comprehended these two ultimate laws. After sensing the wonders of the ultimate law of space, Lin Feng no longer hesitated. He immediately took out the Void Sky Divine Pearl. Swoosh! Following the Void Sky Divine Pearl, Lin Feng quickly flew deeper into the silent galaxy. Along the way, Lin Feng encountered many silent beasts. He did not even need to use the power of his combat body. He could just smash them with the Starfell Pearl. Up until now, Lin Feng had never encountered any silent beast that could withstand a single strike from the Starfell Pearl. Soon, Lin Feng followed the Void Sky Divine Pearl to a cosmos. Here, the Void Sky Divine Pearl kept wandering around and stopped flying. This meant that the Void Sky Divine Palace was very likely in a nearby space. In the past, Lin Feng could not sense it because he had yet to comprehend the ultimate law of space. Now, Lin Feng had already comprehended the ultimate law of space. Hence, when he mobilized the ultimate law of space, he immediately sensed the abnormality in a certain space. Open! With a thought, Lin Feng used the ultimate law of space to open a space. The spatial passage inside was filled with spatial turbulence. However, a magnificent palace was floating in the spatial turbulence. I found the Void Sky Divine Palace. A smile appeared on Lin Feng's face, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He had finally found the Void Sky Divine Palace. This could be considered the second time he had found the Void Sky Divine Palace. However, this was different from the last time. This time, he had relied entirely on his own power to find it. Moreover, he no longer had to scheme against and be on guard against another. Swoosh! Lin Feng flew into the spatial passage, and it quickly closed. Lin Feng looked at the Void Sky Divine Palace in front of him. It did not seem much different from the last time. He directly inscribed spatial divine runes, and the Void Sky Divine Palace was also shaking slightly. As expected, only the 100 spatial divine runes on the Void Sky Divine Pearl can open the Void Sky Divine Palace. Lin Feng remained calm and quickly inscribed 100 spatial divine runes. Buzz, buzz. The Void Sky Divine Palace kept shaking. Then, the main gate slowly opened under Lin Feng's gaze. Lin Feng no longer hesitated. He quickly transformed into a stream of light and entered the Void Sky Divine Palace again. A spatial storm? As soon as Lin Feng flew into the Void Sky Divine Palace, a spatial storm swept over. This spatial storm was very secretive and practically silent. If Lin Feng had not comprehended the ultimate law of space, he might not have sensed it. Only then did Lin Feng realize that the last time he entered that dilapidated cosmos was not a coincidence, but a certainty. It was probably because of this spatial storm that he was brought to that dilapidated cosmos. On the other hand, as Divine Sovereign Void Sky had comprehended the ultimate law of space, he could detect the spatial storm, dodge it, and enter the Void Sky Divine Palace. Let's go! Since Lin Feng had discovered the spatial storm in advance, he could naturally avoid it. Moreover, even if he could not avoid it, his ultimate law of space was entirely capable of withstanding it head-on without being swept into the spatial storm. Swoosh! As the spatial storm swept past, Lin Feng's vision suddenly opened up. He felt as if he had entered a spacious secret chamber. There were books archived everywhere in this secret chamber. The library of the Void Sky Divine Palace? Lin Feng was overjoyed. Although he had not discovered any new substances, being able to enter the library was not bad either. There were many books in these bookshelves. Lin Feng checked them one by one. In the beginning, Lin Feng opened the one on cultivation of the combat body. There were all kinds of cultivation for the combat body on it, which was simply dazzling. However, the various miraculous combat bodies on it also broadened Lin Feng's horizons. Even the combat body cultivation techniques of the Divine Palace of Bamond were not as numerous as the combat body cultivation techniques here. There were all kinds of combat bodies. These were all collected by Divine Emperor Void Sky for billions of years. Their foundation was naturally much deeper than the Divine Palace of Bamond. There was also the mental power cultivation technique. Actually, after cultivating to the level of a Grand Emperor, mental power cultivation methods were no longer of much use. Whether a Grand Emperor could metamorphose into a Divine King was not determined by mental power. However, using these mental power cultivation techniques as references or giving them to some juniors for cultivation was also quite good. Lin Feng did not hold back. He emptied out everything, including things he did not need. These were originally the collection of Divine Emperor Void Sky. Since Divine Emperor Void Sky was already dead, these books had been stashed here for billions of years. If he missed them, they would probably be wasted. It would be better for Lin Feng to bring them out and disseminate them, so that Divine Emperor Void Sky's billions of years of collection would not go to waste. However, all these combat body cultivation techniques and mental cultivation techniques did not have much to do with Lin Feng. These were not what he needed now. Hence, Lin Feng continued browsing. Next, Lin Feng flipped open some miscellaneous notes. They recorded some miraculous and mysterious things in the universe. They were all strange things recorded by some venerables, grand emperors, and even deities, kings, and divine venerables. These were not of much use for cultivation, but Lin Feng read them carefully. The secrets of the universe. Lin Feng was eager to learn more about the secrets of the universe now. At his level, many things involved the secrets of the universe. For example, a divine king once discovered a giant egg when passing through the cosmos. This giant egg floated quietly in the cosmos like an inanimate object. It was as huge as a star, and looked very strange. What was even more strange was that after the divine king exerted 10% of his power, the giant egg was actually unscathed. 10% of a divine king's strength was terrifying enough. Even a top-notch grand emperor would not have been able to withstand it. Later, after the divine king brought the giant egg back, he tried all kinds of methods, but failed to hatch it. Even a full power strike from the divine king failed to destroy the giant egg. Hence, the divine king threw the giant egg into a star. After 100,000 years, the star suddenly collapsed. The giant egg emitted a golden light, and a huge divine bird flew out of the giant egg. The divine king tried to capture the divine bird, but the divine bird was born with extraordinary strength. It broke free from the divine king's restraints with a claw, and disappeared from then on. When Lin Feng saw this, he was also a little shocked. It had only hatched after 100,000 years in a star, and it could break free from the restraints of a divine king. That was a divine king. This divine bird must be very extraordinary. It was already so powerful as soon as it was born. What would it be like after it had grown up in the future? The divine king later speculated that the divine bird should be a being of chaos, and did not belong to this universe. Chaos? Lin Feng fell into deep thought. Ever since the Big Bang, Lin Feng had frequently heard about chaos. Beyond the origin universe laid the chaos, but no one could explain what chaos was. Even divine kings and divine venerables did not know where the chaos was, and had never been to the chaos. However, chaos truly existed, and even affected cultivators in the universe at all times. For example, the new substances that everyone fought over contained chaotic energy. Lin Feng wanted to know what chaos was. Where was chaos? So many divine kings and divine venerables yearned for the chaos. What was so miraculous about it? Lin Feng continued to browse. There were records of divine kings, divine venerables, and even divine emperors, but none of them mentioned the chaos, which disappointed Lin Feng greatly. However, a short record from one of the divine venerables actually mentioned the Silent Galaxy, which perked Lin Feng up. It's rumored that the Silent Galaxy is the place of transcendence of the Divine Emperor of Silence. It's filled with danger and opportunities. This short sentence shocked Lin Feng. The place of transcendence? The Divine Emperor of Silence really existed? Transcended from what? The universe. Lin Feng had once heard that the Silent Galaxy was not simple. There must be something strange about it to have attracted so many grand emperors, divine kings, divine venerables, and even divine emperors. Even Divine Emperor Void Sky had chosen to enter the Silent Galaxy. He was one of the strongest divine emperors in the entire universe back then. In fact, no one would object to calling him the strongest. After all, Divine Emperor Void Sky could transform into a universe and truly break through the barrier of universal lifeforms in an attempt to transcend. Unfortunately, Divine Emperor Void Sky still failed in the end. Perhaps Divine Emperor Void Sky had entered the Silent Galaxy back then because he wanted to find some opportunities that the legendary Divine Emperor of Silence might have left behind. There were very few legends about universal lifeforms in the entire universe. This Silent Galaxy was most likely the place where universal lifeforms transcended. Previously, Lin Feng had felt that the silent beasts had appeared after devouring the blood of Divine Emperor Void Sky. Perhaps some of the silent beasts were born this way, but the Silent Galaxy was huge, and there were so many silent beasts. Not all the silent beasts were born because of the blood of Divine Emperor Void Sky. Perhaps it was related to the legend of the Divine Emperor of Silence. These matters were very far from Lin Feng. Even the Divine Kings and Divine Venerables had not investigated the legends thoroughly. What ability did Lin Feng have to investigate them? Hence, Lin Feng quickly diverted his attention and continued flipping through the miscellaneous notes. Suddenly, he saw an untitled miscellaneous book. Lin Feng took it and flipped it open. His entire body shook, and a shocked glint appeared in his eyes. Divine Emperor Void Sky. It's actually the record of Divine Emperor Void Sky. Lin Feng was really shocked. Divine Emperor Void Sky had actually personally written a record? How incredible! What would Divine Emperor Void Sky record? Lin Feng was also very curious. He immediately opened the miscellaneous notes. There was not much content inside, but it was very explosive. Moreover, it was what Lin Feng urgently needed at the moment. It recorded the various attempts the Divine Emperor Void Sky had made to transcend and become a universal lifeform. This was also the first time Lin Feng knew that transcendence was not that easy. Or rather, to most cultivators, this was a dead end. According to the records of Divine Emperor Void Sky, there was actually no fundamental difference between ordinary combat body cultivators from the Divine King realm to the Divine Venerable realm, and eventually Divine Emperor realm. They were all on the same path, and that was to improve the combat body. However, regardless of whether the combat body was 100,000 light-years or 1,000,000 light-years, or even tens of millions or hundreds of millions of light-years, it was nothing compared to the vast universe. Traditional combat body cultivators had to reach the limit of their combat body power, then resist the power of the entire universe and break out of the wall. Only then could they be considered to have transcended. But even the top divine emperors were nothing compared to the entire universe. They were as insignificant as a leaf. How could they transcend? Divine Emperor Void Sky tried everything he could to strengthen his combat body. But in the end, he realized that it was impossible to transcend through the traditional combat body. Perhaps someone could succeed by chance, but he could not. Hence, Divine Emperor Void Sky took another path. He thought of a method, and that was to use his comprehension of the law of space to master space to an unimaginable level and transform his body into the universe. This was actually transformation into the universe. Lin Feng never knew what Divine Emperor Void Sky meant by transforming into the universe. He had assumed that all cultivators needed to transform into the universe if they wanted to transcend in the end. However, he was wrong. When he saw Divine Emperor Void Sky's record, he knew that his assumption was untrue. Not all cultivators needed to transform into the universe. It was only Divine Emperor Void Sky who did. This was a technique created by Divine Emperor Void Sky in the first place. Or rather, it was a technique he had created based on his own comprehension of the law of space, a technique for transcendence. For a moment, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He also felt deep veneration for Divine Emperor Void Sky. This was a great entity who had created a transcendence technique. To a certain extent, he had even surpassed a Divine Emperor. In the records, Divine Emperor Void Sky was actually not confident. He could only try his best to perfect the technique to transform into a universe, until he finally decided to transform into a universe. The record ended here. There was no record of whether Divine Emperor Void Sky had succeeded. However, based on the records in the Void Sky Divine Pearl, as well as that broken cosmos, Lin Feng could conclude that Divine Emperor Void Sky had still failed in the end. 6 of the 9 Starfell pearls he had forged were all refined from a portion of Divine Emperor Void Sky's physical combat body. But why had Divine Emperor Void Sky failed? From Lin Feng's perspective, Divine Emperor Void Sky's attainments in the law of space had already reached an extremely profound level. Even establishing a world with a thought might be nothing difficult for him. However, in the end, Divine Emperor Void Sky still failed. No, it's not that Divine Emperor Void Sky did not succeed, but that he did not succeed completely. A sharp glint flashed across Lin Feng's eyes. He had entered that broken cosmos before. It was transformed from the body of Divine Emperor Void Sky. His body had transformed into the universe. At least part of his attempt had succeeded, and he had really transformed into the cosmos which had been preserved until now. Apart from the lack of life, the absence of planets and celestial bodies, Lin Feng did not think that it was any different from the universe. From the looks of it, Divine Emperor Void Sky had actually succeeded, but not completely. Perhaps someday, I will take this path too. Lin Feng carefully put away this miscellaneous record, like a rare treasure. The technique for Divine Emperor Void Sky's transformation into the universe was recorded in it, and it had been personally verified by Divine Emperor Void Sky himself. Even though he had failed, he had succeeded at least in part. Although Lin Feng had yet to become a divine king, he believed that this day would not be far in the future. One day he would eventually become a divine king, or even a divine venerable or divine emperor. At that time, if he wanted to transcend, he would probably have to take this path as well. It was definitely not easy to transcend on the traditional path with a combat body. Otherwise, how could a stunning and great entity like the Divine Emperor Void Sky take another path because he could not see any hope? On the other hand, Divine Emperor Void Sky's technique to transform into the universe might also give Lin Feng a trace of hope, and was easier. This was because Lin Feng had the sacred stone of anathema. His comprehension of the law of space would definitely be able to reach or even surpass Divine Emperor Void Sky's level. Lin Feng did not know why Divine Emperor Void Sky had failed. He continued to search. Unfortunately, there were no more records. Lin Feng had almost finished reading all the books on the bookshelf. In the end, he found a few books that actually recorded spatial divine runes. Some of them were personally left behind by the Divine Emperor Void Sky. This was a timely opportunity for Lin Feng. Apart from searching for new substances, he had come to the Void Sky Divine Palace to obtain more spatial divine runes. Now, spatial divine runes were recorded in detail on these few books, so he had achieved his goal. In particular, he had learned the secret of the Divine Emperor Void Sky's transcendence. Could be considered an unexpected gain. It's about time. I'll go to other places. Lin Feng emptied out all the books in the library. He knew that there must be other places in the Void Sky Divine Palace for him to search elsewhere. Hence, he opened the door of the secret chamber and took a step forward. Buzz. The world spun. Lin Feng immediately realized that he had been teleported away. He did not panic and waited quietly for the teleportation to end. This is the Silent Galaxy? Lin Feng looked around. He had actually been teleported out again. He seemed to have been teleported out last time. Even Divine Sovereign Void Sky had exited. Lin Feng had thought that it was an accident. From the looks of it, the Void Sky Divine Palace had teleported them out. In other words, a person could only enter once and obtain one opportunity. However, Lin Feng had the Void Sky Divine Pearl and the ultimate law. How could he only enter once? Void Sky Divine Pearl. Lin Feng used the Void Sky Divine Pearl to track the palace again, tracking it to another area. In this area, Lin Feng successfully found the Void Sky Divine Palace and entered it again. This time, the secret chamber Lin Feng entered was actually empty. It seemed like someone had stepped into it not long ago. It must have been plundered by Divine Sovereign Void Sky. Lin Feng felt that it was a pity. Actually, the Void Sky Divine Temple was quite good. Unfortunately, it was directly destroyed by Lin Feng, and he could not obtain the Void Sky Divine Temple. After leaving the secret chamber, Lin Feng was teleported out again. This time, he was already experienced. He immediately used the Void Sky Divine Pearl to track it again. He would not stop until he had emptied out the Void Sky Divine Palace. Lin Feng even had a bold idea. The Void Sky Divine Palace itself was a supreme treasure. Why not move the Void Sky Divine Palace away directly? With that, Lin Feng found the Void Sky Divine Palace again. However, after giving it a try, he realized that the Void Sky Divine Palace could not be moved. It was not because it was heavy or miraculous, but because of the dense spatial divine runes on the surface of the Void Sky Divine Palace. Only by completely comprehending the spatial divine runes could one move the Void Sky Divine Palace. Spatial divine runes. Lin Feng made up his mind. After entering the Void Sky Divine Palace this time, he would study the spatial divine runes properly and strive to move the Void Sky Divine Palace as well. Hence, Lin Feng entered the Void Sky Divine Palace again. This time, he did not come to a secret chamber, but a place similar to a huge garden. This is? Lin Feng watched this scene in shock. This garden, let's call it a garden for the time being, was full of towering trees everywhere, emitting a rich fragrance. It was as if one could feel boundless vitality in their entire body with every breath. More importantly, what did Lin Feng see? In this garden, the soil actually emitted a faint aura of chaotic energy. The soil itself contained chaotic energy. This was simply incredible. How luxurious! Lin Feng reached out and grabbed. A huge tree bore a ripe fruit, and Lin Feng seized it directly. The fruit looked bright and tempting. Lin Feng swallowed the fruit in one gulp. He did not know what kind of fruit it was, but he knew that it must be very precious. This was a fruit planted from soil containing chaotic energy. After Lin Feng swallowed the fruit, he quickly digested it. Lin Feng's body began to fill with a large amount of energy. Although it was not comparable to true chaotic energy, it was countless times better than the various miraculous items in the universe. At the very least, Lin Feng felt that his combat body was really expanding. It was just that the extent of expansion was relatively small. However, this was sustainable, unlike when Lin Feng devoured the precious items with chaotic energy directly. That way, once it was exhausted, no matter how many miraculous items there were, it would be useless. And now, the miraculous items grown with this soil containing chaotic energy contained miraculous power that could be effective even on the combat body of a Grand Emperor. Lin Feng could no longer imagine the boldness of Divine Emperor Void Sky back then. However, on careful thought, it did not seem impossible. Divine Emperor Void Sky had already embarked on the path of transforming into the universe. Even with chaotic energy, how much could it really do for improving his combat body? In all likelihood, no amount of chaotic energy was enough to allow Divine Emperor Void Sky to transcend. He might as well infuse all this chaotic energy into the soil. In fact, this soil was a new substance to begin with. It came from the chaos and was obtained by the Divine Emperor Void Sky. Then, it was used for planting trees. Well, not just trees, but also some strange flowers. In short, the flowers, plants, and trees in the garden were all the most peculiar miraculous items in the universe. Perhaps to the Divine Emperor Void Sky, the miraculous items in this garden were only meant for appreciation in the first place. This was simply luxury. Lin Feng was not that extravagant. He still wanted to cultivate the consummate combat body. Since the fruits and miraculous items in this garden were useful to his combat body, he would not stand on ceremony. He plucked them one by one and swallowed them all. Swoosh! It was not convenient to use the combat body here. Lin Feng left the Void Sky Divine Palace and appeared in the Silent Galaxy. Lin Feng deployed the tidal combat body. The 95 billion kilometer tidal combat body stretched majestically across the cosmos. Just its terrifying aura could shake the cosmos. Devour! Lin Feng swallowed all the miraculous items he had plundered from the garden in one gulp. Immediately, it was as if a ball of flames was exploding in his body, and the cells in his body began to divide one by one. This time, the commotion was much smaller. Lin Feng could even control the division of the combat body cells. His originally 95 billion kilometer combat body divided again, and his combat body also improved rapidly. 96 billion kilometers, 97 billion kilometers, 98 billion kilometers, 99 billion kilometers. I'm still a little short. Lin Feng frowned. He thought that he could cultivate the consummate combat body this time, but he did not expect to still feel a little lacking. Last time he had felt a little lacking, and this time he also felt a little lacking. Lin Feng even felt that even if he devoured all the chaotic power in the soil in the garden of the Void Sky Divine Palace, he might not be able to cultivate the consummate combat body. Attaining the consummate combat body isn't that easy. I keep feeling like something is missing. Lin Feng frowned. Since ancient times, there had been very few people who had cultivated a planetary consummate combat body, let alone an advanced planetary consummate combat body. Lin Feng knew that there was still a lot of good stuff in the Void Sky Divine Palace, but he was not in a hurry to enter. He wanted to move the Void Sky Divine Palace away once and for all. Hence, the spatial divine runes were the key. Hence, Lin Feng simply comprehended the spatial divine runes in the cosmos. Lin Feng had obtained a few books on spatial divine runes in the Void Sky Divine Palace. They were densely covered in spatial divine runes. Lin Feng had also comprehended 100 spatial divine runes previously, so he could be considered to have some foundation. Hence, comprehending them would yield twice the results with half the effort and was not that troublesome. However, with so many spatial divine runes, even if one comprehended them for 100 years, they might not be able to comprehend them all. Moreover, there was a huge difference between spatial divine runes. For example, even with Lin Feng's current attainments in space, he was actually unable to comprehend some profound spatial divine runes. Even if they could comprehend them, it would take a long time. Lin Feng simply found the Void Sky Divine Palace again. He only wanted to move the Void Sky Divine Palace away. Then, it would be very necessary to understand the spatial divine runes inscribed on the Void Sky Divine Palace. Comparing them to the spatial divine runes on the Void Sky Divine Palace, Lin Feng began to comprehend these spatial divine runes with purposeful focus. He believed that as long as he comprehended the spatial divine runes in the Void Sky Divine Palace thoroughly, Lin Feng would be able to take the Void Sky Divine Palace away. However, there were countless spatial divine runes in the Void Sky Divine Palace. Time passed like flowing water as he comprehended them. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. There was no concept of time in cultivation. Lin Feng could not even feel the passage of time. He was already immersed in comprehending the spatial divine runes. Although Lin Feng did not sense the passage of time, and everything seemed to be very calm, a devastating battle was occurring outside the silent galaxy. Boom! Terrifying silent beasts charged out of the silent galaxy one after another in a frenzy. Grand Emperor Long Yuan led the Grand Emperors of the Divine Palace of Bamond and tried their best to stop these silent beasts. However, there were simply too many of them. Even there were many Grand Emperor-level silent beasts. Your Highness Long Yuan, we can't hold out anymore. Many Grand Emperors were already severely injured, and their defense line was about to be breached. Even though they were dignified Grand Emperors, there was nothing they could do. Grand Emperor Long Yuan's face was also very ashen. He looked at the silent galaxy and muttered in a low voice, "His Highness Lin Feng hasn't come out yet? Looks like he's probably dead." At this thought, Grand Emperor Long Yuan no longer hesitated. He turned around and said to all the cultivators, "Retreat. All disciples of the Divine Palace of Bamond, retreat." Grand Emperor Long Yuan knew very well what kind of disaster his order would bring the Divine Palace of Bamond, but there was nothing he could do. Unless the Divine King himself acted, he was powerless to resist these more and more silent beasts. Buzz. Suddenly, a strange fluctuation spread throughout the entire cosmos. Long Yuan. The loud voice shook the heart. Even though sound could not be transmitted in the universe, this voice seemed to echo in everyone's ears. Everyone looked up at the distant cosmos. His Majesty the Divine King.